The Weight of Yesterday. Do Cats Regret the Past? By Stoiccat. The question hit me one November night, under a sky so bruised with clouds it seemed the world was holding its breath. I was 31, perched on the fire escape of my crumbling apartment in a nowhere town by the sea, a half-empty beer dangling from my hand. Ash, the gray stray with a notched ear and a stare like he'd seen through time itself, sprawled beside me, licking a fresh scratch on his paw. I watched him, slow, methodical, unbothered, and muttered, "Do you ever regret anything, you little bastard?" He flicked his tail, ignored me, and kept grooming. That was Ash. No answers, just presence. But that night, the question stuck. Do cats regret the past? It unraveled into a story I've carried ever since. A story of him, of me, and of the Stoic lessons that pulled me from the wreckage of my own yesterdays. The stray who stayed. I'd met Ash a year earlier, in the thick of a personal storm. The cannery where I'd stacked crates for 5 years had shut down, leaving me with a severance check that wouldn't last a month. Clara, the woman I'd loved since I was 27, had walked out 2 weeks before, her parting words, "I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out," still echoing in my skull. My dad was gone too, taken by lung cancer the year prior, and I'd sold his old truck to pay the funeral bill. I was a man unmoored, jobless, loveless, rootless, drinking too much, sleeping too little, and worrying about a future that felt like a cliff I was already falling off. That's when Ash showed up. I'd stumbled home from the bar one night, the salt air sharp in my lungs, and there he was, sitting on a fire escape like he owned it, his amber eyes glinting in the streetlight. I tossed him a scrap of jerky from my pocket, half expecting him to bolt. He didn't. He ate it slow and deliberate, then settled back down, watching me climb the stairs like I was the stray. The next night, he was there again. And the next, I started calling him Ash, after the gray streak down his back, or maybe the ashes I felt my life had become. And he became my shadow, my silent companion in a world I couldn't make sense of. The weight I carried. I'd always been a prisoner of the past. As a kid, I'd replay my dad's drunken rages in my head, wondering if I'd said something different. "Don't go, stay with me," he wouldn't have stormed out to the bar. In my 20s, I'd agonize over every missed chance. Jobs I didn't take, stories I didn't write, fights with Clara I could have dodged. When she left, it got worse. I'd sit in that apartment, the walls closing in, and pick apart our last year. Every cold glance, every night I'd stayed late at the cannery instead of coming home to her. Regret was a chain I'd forged myself, link by link, and I dragged it everywhere. Ash didn't. That November night, as I sat there nursing my beer and my wounds, I watched him finish cleaning that scratch, probably from some alley tom he'd tangled with, and stretch out, purring like the world was his. The wind howled, rattling the fire escape, and I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter. He didn't flinch. A car screeched past, tires squealing, and I jumped, spilling beer on my jeans. Ash just blinked, licked a paw, settled back. I laughed, half amused, half bitter, and thought, he doesn't give a damn. Why do I? I'd been dipping into stoicism by then, a lifeline I'd stumbled on in a used bookstore. Marcus Aurelius's meditations sat on my coffee table, dog-eared and underlined. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Ash was living proof. He didn't regret the fight that scratched him, didn't mourn the cold he'd slept through, didn't dread the next brawl. He was here, beer-stained fire escape, damp fur me, and that was all. I want to know how he did it, why he didn't carry yesterday like a stone. So I watched him night after night and let him show me. The fight that didn't break him. One evening, a month after he'd claimed the fire escape, Ash came back roughed up, worse than usual. His left ear was bleeding, a chunk of fur missing from his side, and he limped like every step hurt. I cursed under my breath, grabbed a rag and some water, tried to clean him up. He let me, purring through it, but when I reached for the scratch, he swatted my hand, claws sheathed, just a warning, and took over, licking it himself. I sat back, helpless, imagining the fight. Some bigger cat, teeth bared, claws out, Ash holding his ground in a rain-soaked alley. I'd have broken down. If it were me, I'd have replayed it 100 times. Why didn't I run? Why wasn't I stronger and let fester? I did that with Clara's leaving. Every word she'd said, every silence I'd answered with, looping in my head until I couldn't sleep. Ash didn't. He cleaned his wounds, ate the tuna I gave him, and slept deep, steady, like the fight was already a ghost. The next night, he was back to chasing moths, leaping across the railing with that same quiet grace, no trace of bitterness or doubt. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Ash didn't imagine the next fight, didn't regret the last one. He took the hit, healed what he could, moved on. I started trying it. When the dock boss yelled at me a week later, my new gig unloading crates, barely paying rent, I felt the old spiral start. Should have argued back, should have quit the cannery sooner. I stopped, breathed, pictured Ash licking that scratch. It's done, I told myself. Work the next shift. I did, and the sting faded, not gone, just quieter. The storm that didn't shake him. Spring brought a flood. Rain so hard it turned the streets to rivers, seeped under my door, soaked everything. I spent a day mopping, swearing, worrying about mold, money, the heater that shorted out. Ash didn't. He leapt onto the counter, shook the wet from his fur, and napped there, dry and calm while I panicked below. I envied him. His ability to take the mess as it was, no fretting over what it might mean tomorrow. Marcus hit me then. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. The flood was life, messy, unfair, inevitable, and fighting it didn't dry the floor. Ash didn't mourn his soggy paws. He found higher ground. I started doing the same. Heater's dead? I borrowed a space heater from Mrs. Torres next door. Rugs ruined? I tossed it, lived with bare boards. The past, the dry apartment I'd had yesterday, was gone. Ash didn't regret it. I try not to either. Mopped, moved on, slept with him purring beside me. The meal, that didn't matter. Summer came, and I'd settled into the dock job, grueling but steady. Ash still showed up every night, and I'd upgraded his scraps to cheap cat food, a dented kin from the store. One evening, I ran out, forgot to restock, too broke to grab more. I gave him a crust of bread instead, expecting him to turn up his nose. He sniffed it, took a bite, kept purring. No sulking, no glaring like I'd betrayed him. I laughed, shook my head. You're too easy, man. But it wasn't ease. It was acceptance. Epictetus said, "There's only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will." Ash didn't regret the tuna he didn't get. He ate what was there, found joy in it, bread, fish, whatever. I'd spent years regretting what I didn't have. Clara's laugh, my dad's sober days, a job that didn't break my back. Ash showed me another way. I started looking at my rice and beans dinners, my creaky bed, the salt air through the window, and thinking, this is mine. It's enough. The past didn't need to promise more. The absence that didn't haunt him. Fall tested me again. Ash vanished for a week, longest he'd ever been gone. I'd whistle for him, leave food out, pace the alleys, heart sinking. Hit by a car, caught by animal control, dead in a ditch. I'd grown to need him, his quiet weight beside me, and the not knowing ate at me. On the 8th night, he limped back, thinner, a new scar on his flank, but alive. I scooped him up, cursed him out, fed him double. He purred, sprawled across my lap, like the week away was nothing. Seneca again. True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future. Ash didn't regret whatever he'd faced, hunger, cold, a fight. He didn't come back brooding over it. He trusted the flow, came home when he could. I'd regretted every day he was gone. Should have kept him inside. Should have looked harder. But he didn't. I let it go, held him close, focused on the now, his warmth, his breath, the relief. The fall that didn't stop him. Winter brought a scare. I'd rigged a plank across the fire escape for Ash to cross, a shortcut to the next landing. One night, icy wind howling, he slipped, claws scrabbling, body tumbling. I lunged, too late, watched him hit the step below, roll, land hard. My heart stopped. He shook himself, limped a bit, then climbed back up, slower but steady. I cursed, checked him over, bruised, not broken. He slept it off, woke the next day, chasing moths again. Marcus wrote, "Think of the life you have lived until now as over, and, as a dead man, see what's left as a bonus." Ash didn't regret the fall, didn't sit there replaying it, didn't shy from the plank after. He took it, healed, kept going. I'd fallen too, Clara, the job, my dad, and I'd stayed down, replaying every stumble. Ash didn't. I started climbing back, wrote a story that night, rough but real, about a cat who fell and rose. Regret didn't stop him. I wouldn't let stop me. The end that didn't end me. Ash left for good 2 springs later. No warning, no limp, just gone. I searched, left food, called his name into the wind. Nothing. He'd been my anchor, my stoic guru, and losing him hurt, sharp, deep, a quiet ache. But I didn't break. He taught me too much. Cats don't regret the past because they don't need to. They live it, let it go, trust the next step. I mourned him, missed his purring weight, but I didn't chain myself to his absence. Marcus sealed it. Each moment is a new beginning. Don't let what's gone steal what's coming. Ash didn't regret the fights, the falls, the nights he'd slept hungry. He lived them, moved on. I did too. Quit replaying Clara's goodbye, the canneries, and my dad's last breath. I wrote, worked the docks, drank beer on that fire escape alone, and let the past lie. Do cats regret the past? No, Ash didn't. He taught me it's a weight we choose to carry, and I chose to drop it.